All right, so I'm out here simply walking the talk. You can't tell, I'm nice and sweaty. And I just finished up a nice little ruck. And I wanted to give you guys a heads up on this podcast episode that I just recorded with none other than Mr. Dyke. And so this is his second time being on the Simply Walk the Talk podcast. There's a bit of a sense of urgency with trying to help him out with what he has going on. Definitely don't want to miss this episode. He's a wealth of knowledge, very talented, and there might be some ways that you could help him and the USA team, the adaptive athlete wheelchair handball team. They want to go, well, they're going to the World Championships in Egypt. I hope to be a part of that, to go and watch them. But we're going to talk all about that, what that even means. Have you ever even watched handball? Have you watched wheelchair handball? Well, listen to this episode, because if you're like me, you're going to be very excited about it. So enjoy the show.
Welcome to Simply Walk the Talk. Our bodies and minds adapt to what we do most of the time. If you want to change your body and mind, you must change what it is you do most of the time. This podcast explores all things health, wellness, fitness, lifestyle, and biohacking. Stay tuned as we explore various thoughts, methods, and experiences from a multitude of conversations between our interesting guests and experts through many fields of work. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Simply walk the talk. Simply walk the talk.
Josh, thanks so much, man. I'm looking forward to this conversation, putting some more gas on the fire based on our last episode. So thanks again for hosting me today. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. We are about to flame this thing up. So to jump off this conversation, I'm going to play a clip that was sent over to me. And so Ford and I have been in conversations for quite some time, ever since we first met. And he sent me over some things, and I was like, man, we need to do what we can to support you. And then also to let people know what's really going on in at least in this part of your world. Okay, so here's a little video clip for you guys. Again, hopefully you're watching so that you can see this. I think this is very exciting. And this is, here we go.
Handball is a sport that is gaining popularity here in the States, so much so that this weekend, the first ever USA Team Handball Wheelchair National Team is holding its tryouts right down the road in Auburn.
USA 3, 1, 2, 3, USA! Anytime you talk about first for anything, like, it's just awesome to be a part of that history, like, to have the potential to have your name in the history books, like you were the first person to play the sport at an international level. It's just really cool. It's a little different, so just trying to kind of retrain your brain a little bit from some other sports.
30 athletes from 14 states gathered at Beard Eves Memorial Coliseum competing to make the 10-person final roster. Most come with backgrounds in other wheelchair sports.
He always had a vision for what it could be, and we recruited specifically wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis, wheelchair football athletes. We knew they were multi-sport. We knew that they can throw, they can catch.
A lot of the chair skills that we've learned through wheelchair basketball apply, athleticism. I think the rules and just the court is different. And just learn how to play with a different ball. It's a set of game, but I think a lot of the same rules apply.
And a unique trait to wheelchair handball, there aren't separate men's and women's teams. Instead, this is a co-ed sport.
It's super exciting, especially from a women's standpoint. Like, we're a co-ed sport, but there's, as you can see, not many women here. So it's definitely exciting from both of those standpoints, and to be the first ever team potentially going to Worlds in Egypt in September is a super exciting opportunity. And I'm really grateful that I was invited and have had this chance.
Having it at Auburn is no coincidence either, with multiple coaches on staff having ties with the Tigers.
I got my start here in athletics, and then that led to my opportunity with handball, which led to an Olympic game opportunity for me to have it come full circle back here to Auburn. Of course, I love it, and it's just been so wonderful how the Auburn University community and family has opened their arms to us.
As you heard, the United States will be one of 8 countries to compete in the World Championship in Egypt, which will be in September. Players and coaches told us even though they are a young team, they expect to win and eventually push for a bid in the Paralympics in 2028.
That is for Dyke. And if you couldn't tell, he was highlighted and featured in that clip. And obviously, I noticed for it. I know those bright green shoes that you had on, which is really, as well, we'll talk a little bit about that in a moment. Let's just kind of dive in to what this is all about and what your role is and your responsibilities and kind of how we as a community can help you.
Absolutely. I appreciate you, Josh. And thanks for your opportunity sharing the awareness, what's going on. You know, it's been a lightning quick situation that really started, in my opinion, 50 years ago. And the reason I say that is because my lead assistant coach is a 1984 team handball Olympian. Her name is Rita Clanton. She's also a 1996 team handball Olympic coach. And she was coach of the year in 96. In 2013, I met her here at Auburn University as a grad student. We started working together. And she's really the main reason for the start of the mindfulness initiative that I talked back on my previous episode with you, as well as the residency program that existed from 2013 to 2018 here on Auburn's campus. And I was a part of that as an elite athlete on Team USA, Team Handball from 13 all the way to 20. So I had a 7-year career as a Team USA athlete. Now you fast forward to 2024, Rita was a part of the very first tryout for the women's national team in 1974. She received her call for athletes after she finished as an athlete at Auburn University in 3 sports. At the time, they were looking to develop a team. 10 years later, she becomes an Olympian in 84 LA Games. Then you fast forward to 96. She's at Atlanta Games as a coach. 2013, she starts the residency program. We meet. Well, in conjunction to that, I'm also a part of adaptive sports, wheelchair basketball specifically. I was a part of the very first intercollegiate basketball team here at Auburn University, the 2012-2013 season. So you're going to start to see a lot of repeat, a lot of synergies, a lot of recycles in these 10-year blocks. And what I mean by 50 years is from 1974, the first tryout here on U.S. soil for the women's national team, to 2024, the first tryout for wheelchair handball national team on the U.S. soil. That's a 50-year span. I'm just a small piece of this puzzle. I believe that all of this has already been decided, and we're literally and figuratively rolling through the pathways. So I serve right now as the head coach. Rita is our assistant coach. We have another 96 Olympian who Rita coached on staff as well, and she's serving as an assistant coach. She's been working at the Shepherd Rehabilitation Center in Atlanta for over 20 years, helping with trauma rehabilitation. She knows adaptive athletes like the back of her hand. We also have Dr. Sarah Gascon as our head of delegation. We have Camden Bentley here at Auburn University for our our athletic trainer and our strength conditioning coach. And we have Dr. Jency Rhodes behind the scenes as our chief of staff. So our staff is listed as all-stars, and I'm not putting myself in that mix. I say that very humbly because we have an amazing staff, and we're looking forward to continue to push this narrative forward as we get closer to Egypt in 2024.
Yeah, it was interesting because one of the things I was very impressed with when I interviewed you the first time was this idea of adaptive athletes and adaptive sports. And it's something that I feel like doesn't get talked about enough. And so part of my mission today and before previously when I had you on the show was just to shed some light on this entire topic, right? Because finally we're at a point in modern days in which women's basketball is finally getting some recognition, right? And so as I see that developing, I'm like, oh, what about the adaptive sports, right? Because we hear about the Special Olympics every 4 years, right? We see some of these things happening, and then if you have adaptive athletes in your sphere, then of course it's quite normal, right? It's quite normal for you. It's very normal to understand like who are some of the all-star athletes, and you've got Olympians on your staff, and so what I wanted to do today is kind of talk about some of the challenges that you're facing as a coach, some of the challenges your athletes are facing, and then what are also some of the challenges that this whole team that is going to be representing the United States, right? Like what you guys are facing. So I want to kind of dive into some of those topics, and feel free to start wherever.
All right. So to break down that 50-year window, and this helps answer some of these underlying questions, November of 2023, my phone rings, and it was a former teammate of mine, ABA Udo Odoma. He's known as the Handball Ninja on social media platforms. You know who ABA is. It actually came up in our first conversation, oddly enough. And he said, hey, Ford, just connecting with you and want to see how everything's going. I said, ABA, I'm about to get on a plane to go to Hawaii, man. It's vacation time. It's right around my birthday. What's going on? What can I help you with? He said, hey, are you familiar with wheelchair handball? And I said, wait, what did you say? Did you say wheelchair handball? Because he knows I've been in wheelchair basketball, wheelchair tennis, wheelchair power soccer. Like he's aware of my work. And I said, no, I'm not familiar with it. What's going on? He said, well, back up to September 2022, the International Handball Federation hosted the very first wheelchair handball world championship. There were 6 teams in Cairo, Egypt, in September of 2022. He heard about it, and he also knew that out of anyone in our country, I was the perfect fit to spearhead this entire initiative. So reaching out to me, he said, it's going to be a lot of work. I'm not going to lie to you. You're essentially starting from scratch. You're building a blank canvas, not only with staff and team, but financial resources, facilities, apparel, equipment, the whole thing from A to Z. Now, again, mind you, I'm getting on a plane to go to Hawaii for like 12 days. And I said, yeah, man, sounds good. I'll call you when I get back. Not thinking too much about it. He took that as dogma and started getting the U.S. Team Handball Federation involved and saying, hey, Ford's interested. Of course. Like, all right. So I get back from my trip and we reconvene in December. And through a series of email exchanges and Zoom meetings with the Federation, the CEO, one of the coordinators of collegiate development, ABA is on the board. By the end of December of 2023, I'm over at Rita's house for dinner. And I said, hey, Rita, this is kind of what's going on. Just wanted to put it on your radar. She's like, well, you should be the coach. Like without any hesitation, she's like, you should be the coach. There's no question. And I'm like, I don't know. There's a lot more that needs to happen. It's not until September of next year, but I'll keep you posted. So Josh, no joke, January, February, March, pretty much radio silence from our end. There were a few meetings here and there, and there was some stuff happening. And then before you know it, it was about mid-March around spring break. Again, I'm going on spring break. I'm trying to chill out and relax. Phone rings. It's the CEO of USA Team Handball. He said, hey, can you put together a proposal for the International Handball Federation, answering questions such as, where is your staff coming from? Where are your athletes coming from? What type of equipment do you have? Where will you train? How will you get your fiscal responsibilities and support, partnerships and sponsorships? Yeah, sure. I'll go ahead and submit something. April 1st, 2024, not an April Fool's joke. I submitted the proposal to the IHF. 45 days go by. May 16th, my phone rings. Thursday night, May 16th. Coordinator of collegiate development and ABA both leave voicemails on my phone. Listen to the voicemails. Ford, we've been unanimously awarded the wild card slot for the 8th team in September in Egypt in 2024. Let us know if you're still interested. I had to listen to the voicemail twice, each of them twice, because I thought, like, this is crazy. This is literally 2 worlds of mine just going boom and intersecting. So I spent that weekend to digest it a little bit. I called Rita on Monday the next week and I said, hey, Rita, we received the wild card. And she's like, oh my gosh, Ford, I'm so happy for you. I'm so proud of you. And I said, wait. I need you to be the assistant coach with me. Are you interested? And before I could even get the sentence out, she said, yes. And I said, hey, talk to your partner, spend some time. She's like, nope, I'm all good. I'm all in. So from that point on, okay, now I need to get my strength conditioning and my athletic trainer. I'm all in. Need to get another assistant. I'm all in. Need to get a chief of staff. I'm all in. Everybody has been all in from the jump. Then I go meet with my supervisor at Auburn University, Dr. Mary Rudisil. Hey, doc, I need to make sure that I get your blessing for this. She's like, we're all in. Let us know what type of support you need. Let us know what you need facilities. So right away, Josh, Auburn University opened their doors. You saw in that video, we were on site at the Beardy's Memorial Coliseum. Head coach Rob Taylor here for wheelchair basketball, multi-Paralympic coach in the senior level, both men and women. Here are the keys. Go. Build it. Build it, and they will come. Build it, and they will come. Before we know it, we fast forward to June 15th. We had a list of 35 names in our athlete intake form. 18 were selected to join that tryout based on availability, based on logistics. Out of those 18, as of 2 days ago, we invited 14 into our 2024 athlete player pool. And now we're waiting on 7 more virtual submissions as we get closer to the August 2nd through 4th invitation only training camp back at Auburn University, which gets us into our send-off camp August 30th through September 1st. 48 hours later, September 3rd, you're notified whether you made that final roster of 10. We're looking at a 70-30 split men to women. As mentioned in the news clip, it's co-ed.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're taking off September 11th. We land September 12th. We have friendlies 13, 14. We have a rest day 15. 16 is our technical meeting. We have pool play 17. 18 is a day off. 19, 20, 21, gold medal match. We return on that plane September 22nd with a gold medal. And then we're off to the races for LA 28.
Woo, my goodness. I mean, first of all, just hearing you recall all of that, I can tell that this has been a big part of your life, and rightly so, right? Like your recall is amazing. And I thought it was very interesting that you went approximately 3 months or so without really hearing anything. Then you're asked to submit something that quite intense, I think, to come up with, a proposal, right?
It's about 48 hours of work. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just quick
And
turnaround.
then to not hear anything for another month and a half.
Right.
And then all of a sudden your life and your career just changes, right? And
Completely changed.
we had been in touch during that time period, I guess during that month and a half of wait time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I had talked to you about some work that we could possibly do together, because ever since I met you, I knew that you would be a key piece to my community because of your talent, just who you are, the type of person you are. All of that fits very well with the community that I'm building. And so we got to talking about some stuff with Vivo Barefoot. We got to the point where you're now a Vivo Pro coach, which is awesome, right? You're in the Vivo Pro network. And then this idea came up about, the adaptive sports, the handball, right? The wheelchair handball. And I thought, wait a minute, how can we support, right? And so it was interesting to me because I have this creative mind, and I know you do as well. You're very open. And the first thing I thought was just like, okay, we've got someone in the Vivo Pro network that is the head coach for the representation of the United States of America in a world. Like, how can we support? Now, obviously, there's a lot of things that I can do, and we talk a lot about some of the biohacking things that I do. And I know you have a lot of really good concepts, but I don't have any experience in the adaptive sports world. And so I just was like, okay, is there a way? Because I mean, it's almost like a joke, or it's very ironic that you're dealing with adaptive handball, yet I'm talking to you about trying to support through feet, through footwear.
Right.
And so, I think I was wanting to maybe talk about this towards the end of this episode, but I think this might be the perfect time to kind of talk about that. Can you describe some of the differences between adaptive sports and regular sports? And then how might we be able to get people to understand the need for performance optimization, right? Like through adaptive sports. Can you talk about some of that?
Sure, Josh. So 30,000 foot view, adaptive sports from the para side. Para essentially means along with, right? So parachute it's with you to protect you when you're falling out of the sky. So Paralympics happens in conjunction with the Olympics. And what we mean by adaptive sports is we have athletes who either have a congenital disability, meaning they were born with a disability, could be cerebral palsy, spina bifida, etc., versus an acquired disability. It could be something like SCI, which is a spinal cord injury, whether it was a car accident or an ATV or a motocross, or it could be anything, falling, etc. You also could have potentially a bone disease that led to cancer, and there's a lower extremity amputation, upper extremity amputation. So there's a continuum of disability from congenital all the way out to acquired. Within that continuum, you have a variety of classifications. And what I mean by that is you have high point players that, let's say, below knee single leg amputation, so full trunk control, full hip control, drive leg, etc. you're going to see a lot of ability with that player versus a low point player could be a T-spine SCI injury. So trunk control has been reduced and that player could potentially tilt and fall out of their cylinder. There could be a lack of speed or agility involved. And again, there's a continuum there. So more specifically, the sport of wheelchair handball is based on a 4-point classification system, irrespective of sex. So it doesn't matter if you are male or female. There's one female required on the floor at all times. So we're playing 4-on-4. We have goalies on either side. So it's really a 3-on-3 situation. But just like hockey, you have constant changes if needed from a lineup situation, as well as that goalie can come out and play player advantage 4-on-3 type of a situation. So 12 points total. You cannot exceed 12. So you can play 4 threes, you can play 2 4s and fill in the rest of your roster. You can start to play around with what type of lineups do you need? Do you want more speed versus a team that's slower? Do you want more height versus a team that's taller? Do you want better chair skills versus a team that has good agility? So there's games within the games. And I just want to focus on wheelchair handball specifically because that's the team that I'm spearheading right now. I'm involved with a variety of adaptive sports, but to keep the conversation centralized, we have 8 teams headed to Egypt. It's host nation Egypt. Asia is being represented by Team Japan and Team India. South America is being represented by Team Brazil and Team Chile. Europe is being represented by France and Portugal. And we are the 8th slot wildcard position. So we're headed there to compete in pool play with all of this information behind us, with all of these athletes behind us. And we really think that our secret weapon, obviously, is our staff, like I've discussed, but more importantly, are the Olympic, Paralympic, high-level elite athletes that we can gain access to really push this sport to an entirely different stratosphere, to ensure that we open more opportunities, more doors for adaptive athletes, not just for LA 28, but potentially 2032 Brisbane and beyond.
And how many athletes are on the floor per team, or like in total, I guess?
4-on-4. So it's 4
4
aside.
on 4.
So 8 total athletes on the floor. You cannot max them out. You can't go over 4, but you can drop a player if you need to.
And then are the rules of handball, they apply exactly the same to adaptive handball?
It's a great question. So indoor handball is played 6 aside. Indoor able-bodied handball, 6-on-6. So 5 court players plus 2 goalies. You got 12 total. Beach handball is similar, but it's a little bit different. In that regard, you have 4-on-4 situations. So wheelchair indoor handball was derived from beach handball. The reason for that is it's a faster game. There's more spacing on the floor, but you're also reducing economic barriers. If you take a team of 16 down to 10, that's 6 less people with plane tickets, with chairs, with lodging, with food, with all the transportation involved. So you're eliminating barriers to open up opportunities. So for the 4-a-side World Championship, that's what we're interested in being a part of, because we think that not only can we dominate that situation, but we could potentially rewrite the narrative centered around co-ed and potentially play with more than one female on the floor at the same time to really change it up and to see how we can push this sport into both men and women from the international level.
This is really fascinating. So thank you for being here to shed light on this, because I would imagine most people have no experience in able-bodied handball. And then on top of that, they definitely won't have much experience in adaptive handball. What I also think is cool, kind of this low hum that's happening underneath, is just hearing you speak about various things teaches me to speak about the sport in the proper way. You know, able-bodied, adaptive, understanding what para is all about, right? Also, no idea that there's like a point system within each of the athletes. Like, this is blowing my mind right now, right? It's
There's a lot
amazing.
to it, Josh, for sure. There's a lot to it, and it gets complex quickly. And what's intense is that we have such a short period of time. You know, we're looking at the calendar right now. July 15th is right around the corner. So we effectively have 2.5 months. Like it's the speed at which we're moving. And I know people can sense my urgency because that's all I know right now. I don't have time to relax. It's compressed, but I'm trying to be as intentional as possible and be mindful of the moment and trust that process, because this only comes around one time. You're only inaugural once. So I'm trying to soak it all in on all systems, from a cognitive standpoint, from a physical standpoint, emotional, spiritual standpoint, because I know how unique and how special this situation is.
So I have one question about the rules and things like that, but then I want to touch on that piece so I don't want to forget that because it's important. So when a person is designated a certain point, like that athlete, do they have to wear that point number on them on their uniform?
It's a really good question. So classification occurs in a 3-part series. Part 1, you're asked to submit medical documentation from a physician. So that's overviewed. Phase 2 is you're on site in Egypt and they're working you through actual cylinder testing. So cylinder testing is you're in your ball chair, you're reaching out with a ball to the front, to the left, to the back. So you're trying to test the lateral planes, the side planes, the forward planes to see what is this player able to do. That then goes to phase 3. Phase 3 is during competition, during pool play. The classification professionals are there viewing and making those requirements and suggestions on that's the classification that player will stand by. Your question on the number on their jersey or some sort of designation, on the very back of their chairs in the World Championship, there's an 8.5 by 11 card, and that card is color coded. That color code denotes what class they're in. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, you've got green, yellow, 1, 2, and you've got blue, red, 3, 4. So as a coaching staff, we have to know really quickly when lineup changes are occurring, not just in our situation, but the opponent's situation, to make sure that if someone's putting on 2 4s, we can make sure we're meeting them where they are. We don't want to put on 2 2s and a 3 and then figure out the rest. We want to make sure that we're equally matched from a athletic standpoint, from an ability standpoint, speed, agility, throwing accuracy, throwing velocity. There's so many layers of complexity when it comes to classification in and of itself. And that's what makes adaptive sports so nuanced and so unique in comparison to able-bodied sports.
And do you find that there are situations where people are trying to downplay their abilities to have a lower classification?
Oh yeah, you're opening up a can of worms. So classification is a whole episode in and of itself, Josh. And there's a lot of subjectivity, unfortunately. There's a lot of sandbagging that happens, not just in this specific sport, but I've seen it happen at the intercollegiate level and at the para level in wheelchair basketball. I've seen it at the World Cup in power soccer. I've seen it in wheelchair tennis. I've seen it in wheelchair track. I mean, of course, it's going to happen, irrespective of whether an athlete is able-bodied or an adapted athlete, trying to win at all costs. And so if there's situations in able-bodied sport where you see anti-doping or the use of technology or the improper use of supplementation or what have you, you're still going to have that in adaptive sport, and it's called classification. It's how do I manipulate the system to ensure that I put myself individually as an adaptive athlete in the best position to be able to compete at the highest level. So there's just so many uniquenesses in comparison to able-bodied. Able-bodied basketball, you get a set of 5 athletes, biggest, fastest, strongest, most skilled, have them go play. You can't do that in wheelchair basketball. You can only go up to 14 points. You can't load your roster with a bunch of class 4 players. You got to be cognizant of who your athletes are, but also who your lineups are from a point system, from a classification system. Handball is very similar.
Wow. Yeah. Because where my head goes, which you kind of touched on, is like, so is there doping regulations? And it sounds like there is. And then also what comes to mind is like the type of wheelchair. Like, does everyone have to get into the same type of wheelchair, or or is it like a Formula One where you can't have a certain level of of system? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so that's another really good question, is the actual chair that the athletes are performing in. And they're all performance chairs. They're all high performance chairs. So it doesn't look like a day chair. A day chair is narrow. It has straight wheels, no camber. It's meant to fit into elevators and cars and doors and restaurants and tables. These chairs are completely opposite. These chairs are range anywhere from $5,000 up to, I've seen, $12,000. So these are high performance chairs with cambered wheels. They have a front guard. They have casters in the front and the rear to maintain stability. The chair is completely customized to that individual athlete. So if you and I were both on the same team for wheelchair handball, we could not use each other's chairs. My chair is mine. Your chair is yours. It's completely custom, completely fitted to not just your anthropometrics, but also potentially the level of disability. Let's say I'm a single leg amputee. Let's say you have CP or you spina bifida. then we have to change the chair based on the disability to make sure that, again, the athlete is supported to perform at the highest level. You can think of the chair as the lower extremity, and the connectivity points that these athletes have to their chairs. It's unbelievable how refined they are in their chair, what they can do, and how sensitive one change in a chair can either help or completely hinder the performance of the athlete.
Well, that's a great segue into what I wanted to talk about in terms of trying to get the most out of an athlete, right? And I also don't want to gloss over, because that second point I wanted to talk about after asking those classification questions is, I would assume, and I think a lot of people would assume, that because you are representing, your team is representing the United States, that like the government's going to kick in and, you know, take care of all the costs and things like that. And most of this conversation, I'm getting this understanding that that's not even close to being the case. And so you're having to not only be responsible for all those classifications and what roster to have and what, you know, training staff to have and things like that, but you also have to worry about pitching and raising money, and right. So
Correct. Yep.
Yeah.
So we are a brand new discipline within our federation. And it was made clear to me in those December, January, and February meetings that there would be no financial support. And something just told me, though, Josh, that there's something in my heart and there's something in my spiritual essence that's singing that you can't let that be a confounding variable. You have to push past that. You have to trust that when you build something, those layers of support will come, and they have. Auburn community has opened so many doors for us. Auburn Open Like a Tourism has helped us with our lodging, has helped us with our transportation for our open tryout, provided all of our athletes with snacks, unlimited snacks during training, catered meals, lunch, and dinners. They're helping us with all of our marketing. The clip that you showed, that was because of a connectivity point to the reporter Davis Baker, who helped us get on the news. We have the Auburn Villager. We've been on the radio. There's more links happening every single day. We also have been talking to Auburn Bank for financial support, getting our athletes to where they need to go from a training standpoint as well as a competition standpoint. But I know what I'm up against. I'm up against from September 3rd to September 11th. That's a short period of time. It's not a lot of time to book a flight. So we have at least bare minimum $30,000 in airfare, probably closer to $40,000 in airfare. We're in conversations right now with executive leadership at Delta. Atlanta's 90 minutes up the road and it's Delta's hub. Hopefully, and I'm keeping my mind open to this, they're able to come through with massive support, because that helps us in the biggest of ways. But we also are up against a $30,000 per diem. So it costs our team to be on site at this competition. We have to pay $8,000 just to be entered into the competition. We have a private donation that was received that has taken care of that. But we still face a lot of financial costs that, full transparency, are still on the budget line. You know, we've got our uniforms covered. Athletes aren't paying for uniforms. We have our training gear covered. We have our balls that we're able to use. We have on-site facility. But I'm never going to say no to someone interested in supporting our initiative. We received a $5,000 donation from a private family that said, "We believe in your mission. Here you go. Keep it moving forward." And the biggest thing for us, it's not about the money. It's about the support. Of course, cash is king. We know that. But it's about the support. It's about knowing we have a community that when we return successful and shock the world, now it's all in. Now it's a matter of, thank you for supporting us. We're really proud of what we did, but also the community is proud of what we did with that USA across the chest.
Look, man, I hope that this message gets out. And I think because of your time crunch, I want to try to put this ahead of the other, because I have about 4 episodes in the bank right now, but I want to create even more sense of urgency, because your story is amazing. And I can only imagine getting into a situation in which you get an opportunity to represent your country in a world championship, but still have to worry about, am I going to be able to eat? Am I going to be able to afford my flight? Am I going to be able to, come back home and be able to take care of myself?
Right.
Like, these things are important. So I don't want to downplay that by any means. But before we finish, because I know you have plenty of things to do, one of the things that I want to make sure that we touch on, because I think this could be, it's so unique that it might be enough to kind of take your athletes and your team across the finish line, which I'm sure you guys are going to do well regardless. But I know we talked about, when I was first trying to talk with the Vivo team, the Vivo Barefoot team, I kind of had to take a step back and think to myself, okay, how can I get people like Vivo Barefoot and various companies to understand foot health is also important for handball adaptive athletes, right? And how does that even make sense? Can you talk about what we talked about before we started recording? Because I thought it was very fascinating what you came up with.
Yeah, so Vivo Barefoot came up the other day because I know how connected you are with them, and myself being in the network, I've been leveraging the notion of connectivity points in the chair. It's one thing to have a high performance chair, but you also have to have a high performance athlete. And you're a former athlete. You know that when you look good and you feel good, you're going to play good. So your apparel matters. Your socks matter, Josh. Your protective gear matters. How you roll into that facility. Are you wearing shades because that's what you feel like doing? Do you have your music on? All those small things truly do matter. And something as trivial in some minds as footwear is a big deal when it comes to high level performance. Specifically, my challenge for Vivo Barefoot is to consider adaptive athletics. We know my comment earlier about once those athletes are strapped into their chair, things awaken. It's like the Avatar movie, the first one, when that man who was a veteran, he got into his avatar space and he took off running because he was a daily wheelchair user. That's how I explain it to able-bodied individuals. As soon as you see an athlete remove a prosthesis or transfer from a day chair to the next, or comes in with an altered gait, as soon as they get into their chair, it's a done deal. You got to watch out. You got to watch your shins. You got to watch your ankles, because that now you're in their world. Now the whole paradigm has shifted. But I started watching footwear and how that's affecting the positioning of the feet that are strapped into the chair and the dynamics of how the chair is responding to the brain of that athlete. And I believe there could be potential research done on ground reaction force. Even though there's not physical contact with the ground, there's physical contact with the actual chair, which is in contact with the ground. So I know you released one of the grounding boot videos recently, which is huge shout out, as I mentioned to you, but on air, awesome. If you guys haven't checked that out, please go check out Josh's video on grounding boots. That could be the conversation I think we can start around adaptive athletes. How do we maintain connectivity points? How do we ensure that perhaps an atypically developed nervous system is still having the opportunity to receive the feedback from that chair through that footwear into the central nervous system? So there's more refinement, there's more control. And now we're putting ourselves at that advantage. And even if it's a half a point or a 1% advantage, that could be a make or break situation from bronze to silver or silver to gold.
Yep. Yeah, and huge shout out to Vivo Barefoot for even sort of being open to any of these ideas. And like I said to you, and I still hold to this commitment, regardless of if any of my contacts are able to help, I plan to do everything I can to help. And some of the things that come to mind are situations like grounding technology, like actual grounding technology indoors, and how that might help and aid in recovery and things like that. And then also Naboso. For those of you that don't know Naboso, they've created these amazing insoles and mats that have what they call like raised domes or little spikes. And what I've seen just in talking with various clients and friends and family is the moment that you allow your foot to get that sensory input that is so needed, a lot of times things start to wake up, and that should show almost immediately what happens, and even in adaptive athletes. Because when I was at the biohacking conference, there was a guy who was, I'm not sure what his situation was, but he was walking with a cane, and I had him on the pressure plate. We were analyzing his peak pressure and his stance and his gait and things like that. But the moment that he touched, not with his feet, but with his hands, he touched the Naboso sole, it was the light bulb turned on in his brain. Literally, He was like, whoa. And I'm not going to sit here and say that he started miraculously walking perfectly or anything like that.
Sure.
But the fact that he had that reaction of his brain turning on was enough for me to think, okay, how can we also incorporate something like that into adaptive athletes? So that's what I'm hoping to do with you.
I appreciate you, Josh. And, I think this goes without saying, but just to be clear with everybody, this is an inaugural team. This is the first ever. We broke history last weekend by hosting the first ever wheelchair handball tryout for a national team on U.S. soil. We will continue to break history by hosting the first invitation-only training camp in 2-3 weeks' time. Then we will continue to break history by going to our send-off camp And then we will continue to break history when we have our first national anthem played during our opening matches. And then as that tournament goes on, you will see our performance continue to rise. That's the mentality that I have set. That's my intention that I have set as the head coach of this team. And I have a bar that not only my staff is at, but I also hold accountable for my athletes to meet me. But I've told those athletes, you hold us as a staff accountable to that bar as well, because we're in this together. This is a family-oriented approach. And at the end of the day, it's the athletes' team. It's not my team. I just carry a title. It's all about the athletes.
Listen, I thank you so much. I know time is short. I appreciate everything that you do. I want to wish you the best. And with that mentality that you just expressed, you guys are going to come back with the gold. I know that. So for those of you that are wanting to help and find ways to help, I will list as much information as I can in the description and in the show notes. Also, you can go to Dyke. Also, that'll be in the notes. And then maybe shout out anybody else that they could reach out to or look up if you think that's necessary.
Auburn Opelika Tourism, Auburn University, huge contributors. Auburn Bank, Delta.
Shout out. Tigers,
Thorn,
right?
We're the Auburn Tigers. Thorns putting some stake in the game. We're talking to Hyperice, Hypervolt, Vivo Barefoot. We're talking to Top End Sports, who builds the manufacturers of the chairs. We're talking to Wounded Warrior Project today, Paralyzed Veterans Association. I mean, it's an all systems go approach, and we are so excited. No one has said no to us yet. It's all about how do we make sure these barriers are lowered to ensure we don't just show up and field a team. I could give two you-know-whats about that. My intention is to show up and to dominate this competition and come back and shock the world.
Let's go. All right. With that, thanks again for being on the show. And I have no doubt that we'll have you back on. And let's be in touch. All right?
Absolutely, Josh. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Peace, everybody.
Simply walk the talk.
Walk the talk, talking facts. Move like me, but I move a little fast. Make my move, here to last. Fasten these seatbelts, I'm coming past. Take care of me, longevity. Hack my biology, better believe. Walking the talk, soul, mind, and body connected. Better come give us a listen.